I woke up to the sound of screaming. Not just any screaming, Karen's. The self-proclaimed queen of Brookhaven Ridge, our pristine little mountainside community in Colorado. She stood at the edge of my property, her face redder than a setting sun, shrieking like she'd just discovered a corpse. But it wasn't a corpse. It was something far worse in her eyes, her brand-new luxury SUV, now completely immobilized, perched like a stranded rhino in the center of a massive trench I had legally dug around my driveway. Oh, and there was a drawbridge. A fully functional medieval-style drawbridge that I could raise and lower at will. Custom-built, engineer-grade, indestructible. But to understand how we got here, you need to rewind 2 weeks. Back when I was just a quiet homeowner, a guy who wanted to grill steaks, walk his dog, and drink coffee while watching the snow melt off the mountains. I didn't move to Brookhaven Ridge for drama. I moved here after retiring from the military, hoping for peace. What I got was Karen. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. She ran the HOA like it was a military dictatorship. Ironic, given she'd never taken orders in her life. She fined people for unruly wind chimes, banned lawn flamingos, and once measured the height of my fence with a frickin' laser level. I had always managed to stay under her radar until the morning I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and saw her oversized Mercedes G-Wagon parked across my driveway, blocking me in completely. I thought it was an emergency, a mistake, something forgivable. But then I saw her, arms crossed, standing like a traffic cop on the sidewalk, smiling. "Morning, Karen," I said cautiously. "You're blocking my driveway." "Oh, I know," she said, her voice syrupy and smug. "It's HOA business. We've had some complaints." "Complaints?" I blinked. "About my driveway?" "That's confidential," she chirped, waving a folder. "But we've decided your driveway doesn't comply with Brookhaven Ridge design standards. Until we conduct a full review, I'm going to need to keep my vehicle here to prevent further violations." I stared at her. Was this woman actually serious? "I haven't done anything to the driveway," I said, already feeling my blood pressure rise. She examined her manicure like I wasn't even there. "That's not up to you. It's up to the HO board." "And parking your car on private property?" I asked. "That's okay now." She grinned. "Oh, you can try calling a tow truck, but I've already logged my vehicle on the community register as part of an ongoing compliance enforcement. If you tow it, that's harassment." I wanted to yell, to scream, but I didn't. That's what she wanted, for me to lose it so she could fine me for disorderly conduct or whatever fake violation she invented next. So I took a deep breath, nodded, and walked back inside. The game had begun. The next few days were psychological warfare. Every morning, her G-Wagon sat there like a trophy. I couldn't get my truck out, couldn't use my driveway. When I called the HOA, they claimed it was under internal review. When I called a tow company, they cited some local HOA contract clause and refused. Then came the fines. Apparently, not using my driveway was now a failure to maintain access functionality, according to some obscure section of the HOA handbook. I kid you not. She fined me for not using something she had blocked. Every day, a new letter. Every day, a new threat. But I wasn't the type to fold. Karen may have been the queen of HOA technicalities, but I was a former military engineer who had spent years learning how to think around problems. So I did what I do best. I researched. Hours spent combing through Brookhaven Municipal Code, HOA bylaws, and state zoning ordinances. I went deep, like elbow deep into bureaucracy. And finally, I found it. Temporary security enhancements to private property are permitted without prior approval, provided they do not constitute permanent structural changes. A light bulb went off. That sentence changed everything. I triple-checked it, consulted a buddy of mine who's now a city planner, and confirmed it was airtight. Karen had blocked me in? Fine. I wouldn't try to move her SUV. I'd simply build around it. The next morning, I rented an excavator. The guy at the equipment lot blinked when I told him what I needed it for. "You want to dig a trench around your driveway?" "Yup," I said, deadpan. "A deep one, 4 feet minimum, wide enough to prevent vehicle access. Don't worry, it's for security, fully legal." He looked like he wanted to ask more questions, but decided against it. Smart man. By noon, the rumble of heavy machinery echoed through Brookhaven Ridge. A few neighbors peeked out their windows. One woman across the street dropped her yoga mat when she saw the excavator claw bite into the earth. I could feel their curiosity brewing, but no one dared approach me, not with Karen's SUV still proudly parked in my driveway like a monument to HOA tyranny. I hired a local crew, guys who didn't ask too many questions. By sunset, we had the trench carved perfectly. 4 feet deep, 3 feet wide, a perfect ring around my driveway. The only way in or out was over dirt ramps we built temporarily, which I planned to remove. The G-Wagon? Still in the center of it all, perfectly undisturbed. Karen hadn't come outside all day, but she'd seen. I knew she had. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I was giddy. The next morning, I sipped my coffee on the porch just in time to see Karen stomp across her perfectly pruned lawn in pink slippers and a matching robe. Her jaw dropped when she saw what I had done. She rushed up to the edge of the trench, nearly stumbling into it. "What the hell is this?" I looked up innocently. "Oh, hey, Karen, just doing some security upgrades. You know, HOA rules allow it. I filed a notice with the city. You can't just dig a moat around my car." "Well, technically, your car is illegally parked on my property," I said, sipping. "I simply enhanced my perimeter." Her eye twitched. "This is entrapment, sabotage. I'm calling code enforcement." "Please do," I said, pulling out a copy of the ordinance. "I'd love to show them my permits." She turned bright red. "You'll regret this, Whitaker." I just smiled and walked inside, closing the door behind me. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I ordered materials for the real centerpiece, the Drawbridge. I wasn't just going to trap her car. I was going to make a statement, a legend. While I waited for delivery, Karen went full nuclear. She posted on the Brookhaven Ridge Community Forum accusing me of creating a medieval hazard, threatening public safety, and harboring violent tendencies due to a military background. She even called me a lawn terrorist. Did I mention she once banned bird feeders because they attracted aggressive finches? Then came the city inspectors, 2 of them, clipboards in hand. Karen followed behind them like a smug puppy, arms crossed, lips pursed. They walked the perimeter, asked me a few questions, reviewed my paperwork, and finally one of them shrugged and said, "Well, he's within his rights. It's weird, but it's legal." Karen's jaw hit the floor. "Wait, what? Temporary structure, non-permanent excavation, security purpose, all approved." "Honestly, I've seen worse," the inspector said, tipping his hat. "Nice craftsmanship, by the way." I could have kissed that man. But the day wasn't over. That evening, a neighbor I barely knew rang my doorbell. She introduced herself as Dr. Lisa Mays, a structural engineer and former HOA board member who had resigned years ago because of Karen. "I heard about what happened," she said, her eyes sparkling with restrained glee. "And I have to say, this is magnificent. Finally, someone's putting her in her place." "Appreciate it," I said, "but I have a feeling it's not over." She leaned in. "I have documents, financial statements Karen buried. She's been misusing funds for years. She paid for her trip to the Caymans using HOA reserves." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "Oh, I'm dead serious. She's just gotten away with it because she scares people into silence. But you've got the spotlight now, and I think it's time she got burned." I took the folder from her with a slow, satisfied grin. "Oh, she has no idea what's coming." Over the next 48 hours, my driveway became the talk of Brookhaven Ridge. Word spread fast. Neighbors who once whispered behind curtains now walked their dogs a little slower past my house. Kids lingered on their bikes, wide-eyed. Even the Amazon driver took a detour just to gawk at what was quickly being dubbed the Moat. But I was too busy to bask in it, because the Drawbridge was finally happening. Using my military engineering background, and with the help of a few handy buddies from my old unit, I constructed a fully functional retractable drawbridge, reinforced cedar planks, steel hinges, a pulley system I designed myself, and counterweights hidden in flowerbed planters. It was the kind of thing that would make a medieval knight nod in approval. We tested it that Sunday morning. With a crank of the handle, the platform lifted slowly and majestically, rising until it stood upright like a castle gate. Karen's SUV now looked like it had been marooned in an exhibit. People clapped. One guy filmed it and yelled, "Castle Whitaker, baby!" The internet ate it up. My videos were racking up hundreds of thousands of views. Comments poured in from all over. "This is how you handle HOA tyranny. We demand a Moat emoji. Sir Jake of Brookhaven, defender of driveways." Karen, meanwhile, was melting down. She screamed from her porch, claiming I had turned the neighborhood into a circus. She tried to rally other board members for an emergency vote, but most of them were too busy watching the video go viral. She threatened to sue, to call the mayor, to personally oversee the demolition of this madness. But the cherry on top? When a local news crew showed up. I stood in front of my now famous Drawbridge, calmly explaining my security rights, showing my permits, and smiling like I was running for HOA president, except I wasn't. I was staging a revolution. The news segment aired that evening, and somewhere in the background, just off camera, you could see Karen pacing her yard, phone to her ear, seething like a volcano ready to blow. That night, the retaliation came. It started around 2:14 a.m. I woke to the faint creak of wood, then a loud crack. I threw on a hoodie and rushed to the front window. At first, I couldn't see anything. Then I flicked on the motion-activated floodlights and felt my heart jolt. The drawbridge had been sabotaged. One side of it dangled into the trench. The support ropes had been cleanly severed. Wood splinters littered the driveway. My security cameras were blinking red. Someone had cut the feed. But what they didn't know was that I had installed a second set of hidden cameras. I opened the backup feed on my phone and rewound the footage. There she was, Karen, wearing all black, hood up, gloves on, bolt cutters in hand. She had climbed into the trench like some deranged ninja and started sawing through the ropes with surgical precision. She took her time. This wasn't desperation, it was planned, calculated. I called the cops. When they arrived, Karen was already back inside her home, but I showed them everything. Timestamps, footage, prints in the trench dirt. One officer whistled and said, "She's done." They knocked on her door. It took several minutes before she answered, disheveled and playing dumb. She tried to say it wasn't her, that the footage was AI-generated slander, that I was framing her. Didn't work. They arrested her on the spot for trespassing, vandalism, and attempted destruction of private property. As they escorted her to the cruiser, handcuffed and wild-eyed, she screamed, "This isn't over! You'll pay for this!" The neighborhood lit up like Christmas. People stepped outside in their pajamas. A woman across the street clapped. Someone actually popped champagne. But I wasn't celebrating yet because while Karen was in custody, I was busy organizing the final blow. The next morning, I met with a state-level investigator, the same one who had seen the news clip and reached out after whispers about HOA fraud surfaced. I handed him everything Dr. Mays had given me: misappropriated funds, illegal assessments, unauthorized purchases on the HOA account. He flipped through the evidence slowly, his eyebrows rising higher with each page. "This is a gold mine," he said. "If this checks out, she's looking at charges far beyond trespassing." "Oh," I said, "it checks out." By the end of that week, Karen was out on bail, but she wasn't the same woman. She stopped strutting around the neighborhood, stopped measuring grass with a ruler. No more HOA memos and plastic sleeves zip-tied to mailboxes. She was quiet, but I knew better than to mistake quiet for surrender. Behind the scenes, the investigation had picked up speed. Dr. Mays had come through again. She connected me with two former HOA board members who'd resigned under pressure from Karen. Both had stories. Both had records. Both were angry. Turns out Karen's crimes ran deeper than just petty fines and siphoned funds. She had created fake vendors, companies that didn't exist on paper but were receiving monthly payments from the HOA account. One of them was supposedly a landscaping service named Everglade Harmony, which had been billing us $2,000 a month for noise mitigation services. Noise mitigation. Brookhaven Ridge was quieter than a monastery, but the biggest twist? The checks were being cashed in a nearby town, Brighton Hills, by someone named Lyle M. Hendricks. That name didn't mean much to me until I did a little digging. Lyle was Karen's brother, a convicted fraudster who'd been arrested a decade ago for running a shell company scam. Somehow she had hidden his involvement well enough to fly under the radar. Until now, I brought it all to the investigator, who damn near fell out of his chair. You realize this elevates the case to federal level? Wire fraud, money laundering, that's prison time. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Meanwhile, Karen was trying to hold on to what little power she had left. She called an emergency HOA meeting in the Brookhaven Ridge clubhouse, supposedly to restore order after recent incidents. But this time, I was ready for her. When I walked into the meeting, the room went silent. Karen sat at the front table, flanked by two of her last loyalists, people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Half the seats were empty. Everyone else just stared at me. She stood up and launched into a speech about disruption, personal attacks, and a coordinated smear campaign designed to undermine community cohesion. Then she made her fatal mistake. She motioned to a projector screen and said, "Tonight, we'll be reviewing the security hazard created by Mr. Whitaker, whose so-called Drawbridge has endangered neighborhood integrity." I waited for the gasps. Instead, someone in the back muttered, "God, not this again." Karen pressed a button on the remote, and nothing happened. She pressed it again, still nothing. Then a hand went up from the side of the room. Lisa Mays. "Apologies," she said sweetly, "but the board has already voted to revoke your access to HOA equipment pending the fraud investigation." Karen froze. "What investigation?" she spat. I stepped forward and dropped a manila folder on the table. It slid to a stop just inches from her hand. "This one," I said. The tension was razor sharp. I opened the folder and began reading. HOA checks made out to shell companies, emails between Karen and Lyle, bank deposits in offshore accounts, copies of false invoices, each page landing like a punch. The room was dead silent. Finally, one of the board members, an older guy named Preston, who had never spoken in public before, cleared his throat. "I motion to vote for Karen's removal as HOA president," he said. "Seconded," someone else called. And then it happened. A unanimous vote. In under 3 minutes, Karen was officially stripped of all authority. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared ahead like she'd been unplugged from the Matrix. I left the meeting with the air crackling behind me. As I stepped outside, someone clapped. Then another. By the time I hit the sidewalk, the whole room was cheering. But it wasn't over. That night, an anonymous tip came into the investigator's office. It contained the final piece of the puzzle, a document signed by a city inspector, one who had mysteriously cleared Karen's illegal renovations over the years, and who had dismissed dozens of legitimate homeowner complaints. The tip? It said he'd been on Karen's payroll. The name? Inspector Marvin Reyes. And just like that, the circle of corruption was complete. The fallout came fast, like a blizzard over Brookhaven Ridge. Within 72 hours of the anonymous tip, the investigation into Karen exploded into a multi-agency operation. The moment they confirmed that Inspector Marvin Reyes had been taking monthly consulting fees from a dummy company linked to Karen's brother Lyle, the feds got involved. We woke up one morning to a scene straight out of a TV drama. Black SUVs lining the streets, agents with windbreakers marked fraud investigation unit swarming Karen's house. Neighbors stood on porches, mouths open, a few filmed from behind hedges. Even the HOA loyalists didn't dare defend her now. Karen was escorted out in handcuffs, her face pale and rigid, makeup smeared, hair in disarray. She shouted something about libel and deep state setups, but no one was listening. They also arrested Inspector Reyes that same morning. He tried to sneak out through a back window of his townhouse 2 cities over. He didn't get far. That evening, news vans returned. Only this time, they weren't just here for the quirky Drawbridge. They were reporting on the largest HOA fraud scandal in Colorado history. Karen's web had unraveled, revealing nearly $800,000 in embezzled funds over 5 years. Vacations, designer clothes, first-class flights, spa treatments, even a private chef she'd claimed was a community nutrition consultant. The HOA was frozen. A temporary oversight committee was put in place, and within a week, the community held a vote. Brookhaven Ridge HOA would be dissolved entirely. It wasn't even close. Karen's house sat empty. She tried to delay foreclosure, but the mounting legal fees buried her. Eventually, a quiet auction listing appeared online. I passed by the day they moved her furniture out, watched as the last pieces of her kingdom were shoved into a rusted moving truck. She didn't come back. No goodbye, no farewell message, just silence.